"You're still in good water," shouted Hank. The burial mound was on an island, hidden again behind high reeds. The boat turned around another curve in the channel. The spray hit Hank in the face, and as soon as he wiped the drips away, more flooded him with its salty taste and swamp smell. They passed another stand of reeds, and the way opened to the island. He could see lights again. He could also hear chainsaws. This was a true island, although too small to have a name on the maps of the Chesapeake Bay. Still, it was a landmass, not like the plots of grass that floated through the swamp and often sank as they were stepped on. This land was different in that it was firm and did not move or float. There had been more land to the island when Hank was a child. Over the years, marsh had gradually invaded the drier land. Surviving on what was left were the same tall loblolly pines, stretched in a line like warriors on guard, with the irregular needled branches their weapons. The trees were bending hard against the gusts. Along the shoreline of the island were the dozens of holes, usually only a few inches in diameter, where the muskrats had their tunnels. In the center of the island was the burial mound, the only property still owned by Jimmy Swift's tribe. The place was sacred, dedicated to ancient chiefs of the tribe, those who had fought bravely in tribal wars over the surrounding land. Jimmy Swift was the last of the Nanticokes worshiping the swamp island. The mound was covered with marsh grass and small bushes and flanked by pines. It was about 200 feet long and more across, at least 1,000 feet around, rising 15 feet or more above the water level and 10 feet over the island. Around it, the rest of the island was a chaos of inlets and tiny hills and gullies, reeds and trees. The whole of the dry land measured about 400 yards across and more than 1,000 yards in circumference, so that the mound was much smaller. A line of men in fire coats filled sandbags on one of the dry spots beside the sacred hill. The boat sliced into the beach and stopped, its bow a good foot into the crush of reeds at the shore. Hank stood up quickly and, jumping out of the craft, pulled the bow up further while Sammy shut down the engine. "We're putting up bags as much as we can, Hank," he said. The men were constructing a barrier to keep the mound dry. Small work lights, barely illuminating the area, were around the mound. Other men were cutting back what remained of a large fallen pine. Sammy pointed to where they had already started digging a trench into the end of the mound and laying sandbags to keep back the tide. "That's where he is, somewhere down in there," he said. Hank ran toward the lights and past the line of firemen. As he moved ahead, his body bent against the gusting wind, he saw Pete, some called him Old Pete, standing on top of a wall of sandbags. Like the patriarch Moses, Pete was directing the barrier construction. He was a tall, distinctive black man with white hair and a grizzled beard. Hank climbed up through the slippery earth to stand next to Pete. The large man put his big hand on Hank's shoulder, his voice soft with a slight drawl. "Hank, Sammy will get him out." Close by the edge of the mound, the pines were swaying with the winds. Pete pointed at the large tree that had been cut away from the mound. That was the pine sealed Bobby off when it came down. Figure it forced him further into the mound.